I have an ongoing theory that 90% of all Flesh and Blood Alpha products, sealed or unsealed, is in the hands of 100 or less individuals. And I wanted to talk and discuss about this theory that I've had and just give you my perception of why this has a huge impact on the secondary market for these cards. And before I go in depth, I just want to say I've said many times in the past, I'm incredibly biased about this because I own a good portion of Welcome to Wrath Alpha bulk. I own a little bit over a 0.5% of the entire print run. I know that sounds crazy, right? I mean, if there's 400,000 booster packs times 16, which is 16 cards per pack, that's 6.4 million cards. You do the dividing by 100 thing and you get 64,000 cards is 1%. So I own around like 32,000, maybe a little bit more or less. I haven't really counted every single one out there yet. But yeah, man, I own a 0.5% of the entire amount of cardboard that was out there for Flesh and Blood Alpha. And let me just explain, my standpoint, man. Back in 2020, I bought these cards because I wanted them. And I thought, hey, this is the Alpha printing. This is legit. And stores and people just didn't want the bulk. I know that sounds crazy. They just didn't want it. When stores do mass box openings, they're usually left with literally like big boxes full of thousands of single cards that they just can't sell. Or if they do try to sell, it's just not profitable for them to do so. I mean, if you're selling cards for a quarter each, and you have to pay some employee to sort them and do all this shit, and to sell one and individual, and you're paying the employee like $10 an hour, it's not that profitable. It's much easier to give your buddy Bronson a call and say, hey man, Bronson, got you some alpha bulk. I put it in a big box. I'll ship it to you for $150. You want that shit? And I was like, gimme, gimme. I like my bulk. I love that shit. And ultimately that's how I acquired the amount of cards that I got. It's through different stores, different people who, they said, hey, open a case of Welcome to Wrath. Don't need the bulk. Here you go. Or a lot of people back in 2020 were just getting out of the game. Before Unlimited came out, there's this huge thing where people were just fearing about the market. And they're like, oh, Unlimited's going to come out. These prices are going to tank. I'm selling my cards while I can. And I just, I bought bulk and I bought cards that I wanted. But I don't think that I am special. I don't think I'm a special individual who only had that mindset. I feel like there's a lot of other people who had that mindset. And I know this statistic is just coming out of thin air, but I've been in the Flesh and Blood secondary market for a while. I've seen other people and I've heard about different collections where people just have a huge amount of alpha. And when you hear about these huge amount of alpha for certain individuals, and you're like, wait a minute, let me do my numbers and my maths and everything. It's a good amount of the print run. I mean, I've talked to Saint from Fable Hunters. He's a really cool guy. I've met him in person recently at the calling events in Las Vegas. Really great individual. Love his channel. He's a great content creator. And when I was talking to him, yeah, I mean, if you look at how many boxes that he's opened for Flesh and Blood, I think it's around 160. He's opened like 5% of the entire print run for the game. Isn't that crazy? Or for Alpha Welcome to Wrath, which is cool, but that's a very high percentage. And my point is, he's just one guy. I mean, but think about all the other guys in the background that don't content create, who did believe in the game and they did buy a bunch of stuff, and they have really large collections. And I want to reiterate, if people are out there like that, it's great, man. People who have a lot of cards, they believed in the game. They believed in this shit just like I did. We said, hey, that is underpriced. I want it because I want to add to my collection, and this is a thing. So I think that happened a lot back in 2020. I think people, when they got into this game, they realized that it was something. It happened to me. It's happened to a lot of people. I feel like it's happened to Saint. Don't want to put it in their words in his mouth, but I feel like there's this overall feeling with collectors that we looked at Flesh and Blood, we looked at the gameplay, we looked at the art, we looked at the lore, we looked at everything about it, we looked at the company who's running it, and we just went all in. We just really wholeheartedly said, hey, there's something to this. This game is going to last. This game is going to be huge in the future. I want to get in now. And that's how I felt as well, man. I just that feeling came over me. I was like, this is something special. I want to get as much as I can. And, at the time, mainly I could only get bulk. And as a collector, I know it sounds weird to have that many cards because you're like, Bronson, why do you need that many cards? You don't need that many cards. You have many, many copies of many, many cards there. What are you doing here? And I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a, regular dude. I don't have the money to buy these expensive type items, right? But think about it. It's kind of cool that I own a percentage of the entire print run of bulk. I know that sounds stupid, but for some reason in my, smooth ass brain, that's a cool thing. Because if you think about these, Shianas or, the Heart of Faendale and all these stuff, why are they collectible? Because they are one of what? 200, one of 300, one of 600? There's a very low supply. Well, if you think about bulk, if you own a half a percent of the print run, you're essentially own 1 out of 200. You get my feeling? Because there's only 200 other people who could possibly own half a percent of the entire print run. So essentially, it's scarcity through bulk. If I have like 7 bins full of half a percent of the print run for Welcome to Wrath, I essentially own 1 out of 200, and that's what I'm kind of, my end goal is with the whole bulk stuff. I just think that's interesting and that's cool. And I think that other individuals probably had a much better approach to buying stuff. They bought, sealed booster boxes. They bought the cold foil legendaries that they won at like $300 a piece in 2020. They bought out like a bunch of these rare items. And I think that ultimately a small group of people, like 100 people, maybe less, most likely less, own 90% of Welcome to Wrath Alpha. And I want to segment into why this is important. And you might say, okay, great, great man. Let's say your theory is correct. Your Bronson's theory that he just makes off, when he's sitting on the toilet and he's just thinking about random shit. Think about how that affects the secondary market. When you have 90% of the supply in 100 people's hands, and a lot of those people believe in the game and they probably don't want to sell out, what's that going to do to price? What is that going to do when all these cards dry up on the secondary market and people just don't, they're just not there? Well, if you have a bunch in the market that's just not there, the prices got to go up. And I hate I hate evangelizing about this whole thing because I know I'm incredibly biased, and I have been very socially responsible and only talk about this when the market is in a dip. I wanted to talk about this earlier in 2021, but I just felt like the market was too crazy. But I'm talking about it now because the market's pretty level-headed, and obviously this is not investment advice. I'm no financial advisor at all. I'm just a normal guy in a normal room, and that's a subject for a different day. I do see the aspect where I believe in something and I'm buying it and I'm promoting it as well. And you might take my thoughts and opinions and think certain ways because of what I'm thinking. I don't want to influence it in that aspect. And I do know I am incredibly biased from this opinion. I just want to reiterate that extremely well. But it is what it is, man. I mean, if you've been if you've been in the secondary market for Flesh and Blood, you've seen certain people, buying a bunch of stuff. You've seen certain collections. We've heard from Saint from Fable Hunters, awesome guy. He has a really big collection. I mean, he might own like 5% of the total print run. And then he said, a Lark Chu was another individual out there who was a really, big collector of Flesh and Blood, and his collection's really big. So it's like, if you have so many individuals who own 2%, 3%, of this game, and I own like 0.5% of Alpha Bulk, it doesn't, if you add all these percentages up, it's not that many individuals out there who own the total supply of Alpha. And I mean, Maybe, other people who are in LSS like believed in the game. We don't know that. And we don't know if there's a, policy behind how much they could purchase and I wouldn't blame them. If I made my own TCG, I'd want to buy up a bunch of, cards. I'd want to, get a full play set and a bunch of like the rare cards because hey, that's my game. I want to buy the cards in my game. So overall, the effects on the secondary market, I think, have yet to be seen, especially with bulk. I mean, you have a lot of these cards with 25 cents each. If you have a entire box of Welcome to Wrath Alpha, which is extremely rare, and these things are going for 3,000 plus dollars, and the common cards are 25 cents, it's only a matter of time before those dry up on the secondary market where people just don't want to sell. I mean, the top 100 people who own 90% of Vulcan's Wrath Alpha, they don't want to sell their stuff. They're like, hey, I have my stuff and I don't need the money. I'm just going to keep it forever. And I think that type of mindset is going to just push out alpha cards from the secondary market. So you're not going to have much supply. It's really basically decreasing the supply of these cards that are going to be out there dramatically. And I can tell you straight up, man, there were tons of stores that did mass box openings for Welcome to Wrath Alpha, and they just didn't want the bulk. I'm telling you, man, I saw all the time. They're like, hey, just selling bulk, selling them all. Take them all. It's in this box. Do you want it? And it was on eBay, and you know me. I was like, yes, please. And I was buying a bunch of bulk and all that stuff, and I think there's other people too who just got a bunch of boxes and they're smart. They believed in the game, and ultimately now those effects are going to trickle out. We haven't really had a really big demand for alpha in 2021. In 2020, you could definitely see it. Once Unlimited came out for Welcome to Wrath, alpha prices skyrocketed. I believe it was like the second big market boom in the secondary market for Flesh and Blood, and it was because people were like, "Hey, this is Unlimited. I want to buy the alpha version." The money flowed that way back there. It was like, hey, well, now, and they realized, hey, this is the first print. This is the legit thing. And I just wanted to talk about this subject. I know that I'm incredibly biased, but I think that people still don't understand this concept. And I know it's just a theory. I know it's just in my brain, but I'm very, very high confidence that this is a thing. That literally only 100 individuals own 90% of the entire print run of Welcome to Wrath Alpha. And the reason why this is such a big deal is when you have like other TCGs like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon, it took a lot of time for these individuals to accumulate, cards and for certain individuals to have 3% or 5% of the print run of maybe like the highest graded cards. It took people a long time to amass these collections because the price on the cards was very high. But when you had these cards in 2020 for Flesh and Blood that weren't as expensive, and where people were just uh, you know buying a lot because they're in that collectability mindset, it made it so a small group could own the largest portion. Whereas the other TCGs in the past, I think it just took a very long time for that to occur, for a smaller group to own a large percent of what was out there. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen in the future. And again, I'm just a normal guy. I buy a lot of bulk. I sniff the cardboard. It's a lot of fun, man. It's nice to have big collections, and I'm just a weird ass bulk collector. I like that kind of stuff, and I think that overall, even for the regular Majestics at this current time, they're selling for like, 60 to 80 bucks. I mean, there's not that many Majestics in Welcome to Wrath Alpha, available. And if you look at the print run numbers and you back into certain things, even the rares and the super rares, there's not that many of those cards out there. And when you have a big set of the market, like 90%, is just not going to ever be on the open market. I mean, let's say the number is even like 60%. That means if you take the total supply out there for Majestics, you know, multiply it by 40%, that's the maximum amount of cards that could ever be on the market at one time. it's not very high. And I think that it's going to take a bit for the cards out there to just be sold and for people to just not have them anymore to put on the market to where people realize, hey, these are really underpriced. But we'll see how it all plays out. But ultimately, I'm just happy to have my collection, happy to have my bulk. Maybe one day I'll have a whole percentage of the print run of Welcome to Wrath Alpha. That'd be cool. If I could get 64,000 cards, I can have like I'd be part of the 1%, man. I could I could say 1% of all the cards in the Alpha set. Wouldn't that be crazy? I don't know. For some reason, that shit just really intrigues me. If you look at an entire print run, so 6.4 million cards, and you have 1% of an entire print run, isn't that cool? I don't know. Maybe one day, but just something to take into consideration. Let me know what you think, and tell me if you have any other theories, because maybe there's other different aspects in the secondary market that you see that I haven't seen. It's interesting. I know a lot of these times these statistics are hard to prove, especially because a lot of individuals who have those big collections want to stay private, and I totally respect that. But I think that if you've analyzed the market as much as I have, you do see these types of things emerge and these different things that are affecting the supply of the cards that could possibly be on the secondary market, which greatly impacts price. And when those things occur, I think it's only a matter of time before you see the price movement occur. So let me know what you think.